I think the hardest job of casting, or the most difficult time we had in casting the show, Dark Shadows, was casting the part of Barnabas for some reason. I don't think anybody quite knew what Barnabas was supposed to look like. You can imagine oh, but any number of characters. They're going to be a pretty blonde girl or a brunette or a little boy, but what does a vampire look like? How do we create a vampire? So the casting, we read people over and over, and casting directors sent in lots of people. And the day we had been written in, the day was getting closer when we were absolutely going to need the character. And we need the portrait. So we thought, well, the thing we should do is paint the portrait all except for the face. And so I got all gussied up with the costumes and the rings and the little curly, funny little hair. And I sat and posed, and I was photographed for it, but the photograph then was up in the scene shop. They did the portrait with just a blank for the face. And truly, at the last minute, Jonathan Frid turned up. And the thing about Jonathan, he was going through another Yale drama school graduate. He was going through a process of having a lot of oral dental work done. And he had just completed one section, and I think the upper part of his mouth had been handled, and he was going to go into the next part the following week. We said, you can't do anything, you've got to take this part. So he agreed to take the part, and he looked great. And so he had this strange little overbite, sort of, and it really looked absolutely wonderful. And his dentist, I guess he's the one that made the fangs for Barnabas. And Barnabas' then portrait got in, and his face was photographed and painted from that photograph and inserted in the portrait. And that was Barnabas. But right down to the wire, we did not have a vampire. Barnabas caught on like a house on fire, and it just went wonderfully well with him. I think the thing about Barnabas, he brought a quality to it that was really, I think, quite wonderful. He was basically, I think, a Shakespearean actor, that's what he wanted to be, and he did have that quality. He had a very classical quality about his performance, and I think he brought that sense of the classic to the part of Barnabas, and it really made all the difference in the world. He just wasn't a snapping and snarling vampire camping away. He played it very straight, as did all our actors on the show, and I think that's what made the difference in the show, that Dark Shadows could be anything that you wanted it to be. You could claim it was camp, you could play it straight, you could, as you viewed it, you could add a certain amount of belief or disbelief or whatever, but we never joked it, we never kidded it, and that made a great deal of difference to the viewing audience. The other thing, probably because we were restricted by space and budget, we did not overproduce the show. It just didn't become too big. It wasn't great sweeping staircases. It wasn't any number of things. So that a certain amount of imagination really was given to the audience. That when we went into our little graveyard, it was truly a little graveyard shot with a wide lens. But you had the feeling as a truck that there was always more there, that your mind could stay at. And the little hoot of the owl, where if we had taken a wide shot of a real graveyard, nothing is left for the audience to give to the pictures. And I think it made all the difference. This is a little in hindsight, but looking back on it, I think it made all the difference in the world, because you could bring something to it, a little bit of the radio thing, but transfer it into a rather limited budget and a small amount of space. And of course, a lot of good acting. Cy Tomashoff did a remarkable job with the scenery. And Cy and I worked together live in the Armstrong Circle Theater, so we had great rapport. And I knew what I thought Dan wanted, and I knew certainly what I wanted, and Cy and I could agree. A lot of it, since it was unique and I use it loosely, as soap opera, you just really had to anticipate. There was no kitchen for people to sit down and have their last cup of coffee, or the living room for them just to chat about the relationships of Uncle George and the new girl next door and the rest of that stuff. So we really had to create a whole village about the Collins family. The special effects, very often, mostly I would say, Dan worked very closely with the writers, but I would get a call from the writer, from Sam or Gordon, and they'd say, can we do such and so, or do you think we can do such and so? And generally I'd say yes, because a lot of that stuff I designed or drew up. I am an artist, so I did a lot of storyboards for special effects for the show. If we had to have a sense of reversed images, we sometimes, because the tape or the techniques of television at that time were a little primitive, so we would have to create a whole set in reverse so that you had the feeling you were seeing it or walking through the mirror into the set. But the candles and the doors and the lights and everything had to match, but in reverse, as though it was a mirror. So we worked very well, and I would